Hey friend, in today's watercolor landscape tutorial, I'm going to be teaching step-by-step how to paint Voyageurs National Park, Minnesota in the fall season. Without further ado, let's get painting. For today's tutorial, I'm using orange, red, yellow, yellow ochre, Perelyne Green, Sap Green, Payne's Gray, and Burnt Umber by Winsor Newton. The paper I've taped down here is a size 5 by 7 inches, and I'll be using a size 16, size 6, and size 2 round Princeton brush. First step that I would like to do is start our sky, and our sky is going to be very subtle and muted. I'm going to get some water with my size 16 brush to do a wash to about halfway down the page, all the way across edge to edge. And I'm going to use a very light watered down Payne's Gray for our sky. I essentially just want a little bit of kind of like a foggy, muted sky. And I'm only going to apply this in the top inch and a half and kind of subtly drag it down and let it kind of naturally bleed. But it's just going to be kept very simple with that. Just letting this set and dry. And then when we come back, we can add our trees. Now that our sky is dry, we can start our trees. And I'm going to just take a little bit of some light yellow ochre just to kind of mark off where the land will meet the water. So just around halfway. Right around this point. And in the meantime, I'm going to add just a little bit of Payne's Gray to our water down below. So I'm just going to do a wash of water to start. And then I'm just going to tap in a little bit of the Payne's Gray using my size 16 brush. Don't want too much, again, similar to the sky. You don't want too much of the Payne's Gray. Just a little bit will go a long way. And now I'm going to use my size 6 brush to start building our trees officially. So to begin, I want to have some really vibrant pops of orange. So I'm going to start over on this left side and just tap my brush to do this kind of a rounded shape with rough edges. And I'd also like maybe another pop of orange over towards the right. Maybe this tree is more tall and narrow. I'm just, again, getting this subtle texture. This is kind of like a little teardrop shape. Next, I'm going to grab a little bit of red, and I kind of want the red to bleed into the orange. So I'm gonna do some red over towards the left. I really want this landscape to be kind of loose and not too overly structured. I'll do a larger tree over here with the vibrant red. It's okay if it kind of bleeds into the orange a little bit. And I'm just gonna have the bottom kind of come all the way down. And just add some rough edges, just tapping the tip of my brush. And I also want a tree that's red just in the center area. Maybe it's slightly shorter. Okay, now from here, I would like to add just a few green trees. Maybe there's a few pops of trees that haven't quite changed color. So I'm going to take a little bit of Sap Green and just implement a couple pine trees in the mix. So I'm going to start by using really light pressure with my brush and doing this textured cone shape silhouette. So the top is nice and narrow with a few brush strokes that are very dainty, and the bottom is nice and wide. Next, I'm going to do maybe one over towards the left here, and it's okay that this is kind of bleeding. I can just lift it just a little bit. We'll have a reflection regardless, so all good. I'm just going to do a small little dainty tree next to this red tree. Maybe I'll do one smaller one off towards the left here. And then maybe one good-sized pine tree that can overlap slightly on this orange tree. And then I would also like one that's just partially in view towards the right. Maybe this one is extra tall, and it's going to be kind of underlapped behind the red tree. So I'm just carefully kind of painting alongside that edge. Okay, and before we add any more pops of green, I would like to incorporate some yellow trees. So I'm going to add just a few pops of yellow. I'm going to squeeze some yellow at the top here, just above this orange tree, and kind of tucking it in between. Next, I may want to do a yellow tree slightly underlapped against this red tree. And maybe just a small one off towards the right as well, just kind of popping through. And next, I would like to add some yellow ochre, just for like a more muted yellow. So I will just do one little yellow ochre tree here, and maybe one other I'll squeeze in. And I'll just add one more yellow ochre tree just in between this area. It's okay if it kind of meshes with some of the yellow tree. Okay, lastly, I want to take my brush and mix together some sap green with our very deep green, that's the Perelyne Green, just to get more of like a hunter green color incorporated in here. And for that, I just want to do a few taller pine trees off in the distance. So I'm just going to add, starting in the center, I just want to layer in some dark foliage here, some darker pine trees. We're just building our texture in layers here, kind of painting alongside the edge of the trees around it. I'll do one small one here, And I'm just going to fill in this little gap with another tree, just partially in view. Then maybe a small, just tip of a tree right above here. It's really fun to play with like the different height variants. I'll do one tree here. I'm just gonna lay that out ahead of time. And then maybe one over towards the left. And then just the tip of a small one, maybe right here. Okay, it looks like we may need one little tree over here. So I think I'm gonna go with the color, I think I'll go with some red. So I'm just gonna pop in a little bit of red in here. Okay, next what I want to do is just water down some burnt umber. And all I want to do is add in just a little bit of a touch of some burnt umber to help kind of shade some of our trees. So I'm just gonna pop some of that onto our red trees and our orange tree, just to add a little bit more shading. I'm not going too overboard, but this is just going to give our trees a little bit more depth. Next, I want to use a little bit of concentrated yellow ochre, and I'm just going to use that to layer on some of the yellow ochre trees and the yellow trees, just using the tip of my brush. Okay, so now we can start to build our reflection down below, which is so fun. In the meantime, I'm going to use a little bit of Sap Green and some burnt umber to just build the floor below, just to give a little bit more structure and division between the water and the land. And then now I'm just going to add in a little bit of burnt umber, just kind of loosely incorporating that. And then I'm just going to take a damp brush and smooth out the transition line between the ground and the trees. Okay, so while the ground kind of sets, I'm going to take my size 2 brush and use some burnt umber just to add in a few branches. So I'm just going to take light pressure with my size 2 brush and add in a few angled dash lines. Even at the base of some of the trees, I'm just going to add a little bit of a trunk here and there, and then just add in a few angled Y-shaped letters, which will kind of give the illusion of branches. So I'm just kind of mimicking the letter Y, adding these angled lines, that way our foliage doesn't look disconnected and like it's floating. This is kind of like our connection between the foliage, is adding all of these little brown subtle dashes. Okay, so now I'm going to take my size 16 brush and do a wash of water all the way across. We already have some of the subtle undertones of the Payne's gray, but I'm just going to add a light amount of water all the way across. That way we can start working on our reflection. I want the water to touch the line of the ground there. And now I can take my size 6 brush and I'm slowly going to start incorporating some color, kind of mimicking what is above. So I'm going to start with the blend of the Perelyne Green and the Sap Green with a very small touch of burnt umber as well. Then from here, I want to add some red. This is just going to mimic our tree here. And this is where things get a little nutty as I'm layering our colors. So I'm trying to work a little bit fast against the speed of the drying water as it's getting absorbed by the paper. So I'm gonna go color by color and just re-mimic what is there above, just mirrored in reverse. All right, now we've got our red. I'm now going to do our orange. And with the water, our colors are gonna bleed and mesh, so don't be afraid to add some of those qualities, meaning don't be afraid of the colors just bleeding together. That's kind of what we want, especially with the water reflection. Did a little bit of orange here. That's supposed to be yellow ochre, but not a big deal. So now I'm gonna do yellow ochre now that I've laid out the orange. I'll just layer some on top of this orange. Okay, and now we've got our yellow. There's a little bit of yellow in between these two trees, so I'm just gonna add that in. There's some yellow popping behind this red tree, and then some higher up here. And next we're gonna work with our Sap Green and our Perelyne Green blend. And I just want to get some of those pops of green. I'm just painting the tips of these trees in reverse, layering some green amongst the warmer colors here. I'm going to add in a little bit of the green on this tree. There we go. Looks like my paper is almost dry, so I'm just gonna add in this last tree here. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of water to kind of help blend the harshness or the harsh lines of these last couple of trees. So I'm just going alongside the edges and adding a little bit of water. Alrighty, so while this is setting, I still want to add a little bit of burnt umber branches in the reflection. So I am going to just use a light amount of burnt umber just to get a few pops of those branches in. So I'm not doing it as quite detailed as when we were painting over the dried trees on the land, but I do want just a little bit of the burnt umber included in the reflection, but I'm not going very overboard. Mainly with the trunk and then just a couple branches. Okay, so now I want to take some watered down Payne's Gray, and I really want it to be quite watered down. So just a bit of the Payne's Gray, and then I'm going to take my size 2 brush, and I want to do a few horizontal brush strokes using the light watered down Payne's Gray. So I'm doing some long brush strokes, but then I'm also going to do a few horizontal dashes, some smaller brush strokes here and there. This is just going to allow there to be some subtle movement and texture to our water, just to really further differentiate the reflection from the land trees above. I have seen not Voyageurs National Park in person, but Minnesota, which is where Voyageurs National Park is, gets some stunning fall colors. That's where my grandpa lived, and we got to visit him during the fall one season, and truly the colors were absolutely breathtaking. Growing up in the desert in Southern California, we don't really get like a true fall compared to like other places, like say back east or in the Midwest. And yeah, the colors were just unbelievable. We would literally pull over. We would be driving and pull over just to take photos with a bunch of trees. There was even like peach orange colored trees, dark purple, like every fall color you can imagine. They were just stunning and they were everywhere. And it was definitely one of my favorite falls I've ever gotten to see. So I would love to go back sometime. Okay, so now we have our water texture. The last thing that I would like to do is just redefine, wow, that sounded like a whistle, is to redefine the kind of ground area with a little bit of texture. So I'm going to do some burnt umber and just texturize a little bit of burnt umber on our ground. So I'm just taking my size 2 brush and just adding in a little bit of texture with this burnt umber. Okay, just kidding. I took a second look. I tend to do this. And now for the last step, finish that scene, and then next I look back, I'm like, just kidding, I need to add something more. So I want to just do a few more broad, deeper brush strokes, slightly darker of the Payne's gray, and I'm going to use my size 6 brush this time. I just feel like our water is a little bit too muted. I feel like it needs just a little bit more ashy Payne's gray incorporated in, just to give it even more contrast to the sky and just a little bit more depth and texture. So I'm just using my size 6 brush with some watered down Payne's gray just to get a little bit more detail in here. Okay, I'm satisfied now. Thank you so much for joining me for today's watercolor landscape tutorial on Voyageurs National Park, Minnesota in the fall season. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any further landscape tutorials.